about time. It's circling. All right. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Pep Talk, Productive Environment Podcast. I am Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute here in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, joined by.
I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute, and I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And we hope you're ready for your pep talk because sometimes we need a pep talk to get organized. So if you're out there and you're looking at, it's the end of the year, as you can see by my decorations, at the time of this recording. And this is always a time for people to start thinking about what they want to be different next year. And so, I don't even know if people really do New Year's resolutions anymore, but intentions is a big word, right, Barbara? Intentions.
Yeah.
And so getting organized is normally on the top of that list. There's maybe quit smoking, lose weight, exercise, eat better, and get organized. They're all kind of at the same level there. So that's something we're going to talk about. If you've been around our community long, then you've heard us. Some of the things we share today, it's going to be a great refresher for you. If you're brand new, it may be revolutionary to you. So we are going to talk today about organizing paper at home, what to toss, and how to find the rest. Okay, so Barbara, I think you've got your book there. If you want to hold that up, let's take a look at that. There's an actual book, Organizing Paper at Home.
It started out, that's the book that started out. Originally, it was Taming the Paper Tiger. The very first book was in 1988.
That's the year I graduated from high school.
And it came about because I had started residential organizing. And what I learned very quickly was that the number one organizing challenge in the household was paper. And we would clean out the closets and we'd find boxes of paper. We'd clean out the garage and we'd find boxes of paper. We'd clean out the attic and we'd find boxes of paper. And the question that created that, or that was the genesis of the book, was people would ask me the question, how long do you keep? And in those days, and Andrea, I don't even know if you remember this or not, but we used to get our canceled checks wrapped up in bank statements. They came in big envelopes and they were big and thick, and they had every check you'd ever written wrapped up in the bank statement. And people asked me the question, how long do you keep them? I had no idea, but I figured there must be a book in the library about it. So I went to the library, and much to my amazement, I didn't find one. And I thought, and it was also bank statements, and it was like real estate records and tax records and memorabilia and medical records, Social Security records, and all that. How long do you keep those things? And I had no idea. And I thought it was so interesting that in the library, there was not a book answering that question, because it didn't matter if you earned $18,000 a year or $800,000 a year. That was something you still needed to know. And so I started researching those questions. So the book, you can see it's fairly intense. I mean, it's quite a bit of space, but it's not designed to read from cover to cover. I mean, you could read it from cover to cover. And if you did, it would cover every single piece of paper that comes in the household. It would photographs, memorabilia, junk mail, recipes, I mean, everything. But it's really designed to be able to look for a specific thing. Like it says, what should you keep in a safe deposit box? And how long do you keep those records? And what I learned in my research was, if you ask 3 accountants and 3 lawyers, you'd probably get at least 4 different answers. Because they're really, and you can go to the IRS and you can get it, but it's not very user friendly. But here's what I've learned through the years now, over 4 decades of helping people clear out paper. What I've learned is the most important. First of all, Andrea said this may be revolutionary. And if you've never been on this call before, then the 4 words that can revolutionize your life, because I've seen it with many of our clients, is clutter is postponed decisions. The reason those papers pile up is that you haven't decided, do I need to keep this? Where do I need to keep this? How do I need to keep this? How am I going to find this? And then Andrea said to me once when we were working together, she said, Barbara, it's not enough to make the decision. You have to have a way to implement the decision. Bingo. If I have a piece of paper and I say, okay, I want this piece of paper, but I don't need this until March. What is my system so that when March comes, especially if you want it on March 7th or whatever, what is my system so I do not have to touch this piece of paper between now and March 7th, but I can be absolutely sure on March 7th it's going to show up. And so the part of the book that we're going to be talking about today is there are only 3 decisions you can make about any piece of paper: file, act, or toss. File means I don't know if I'll ever need it, but I don't have the guts to throw it away. So that's a reference file. And you can have as many as you want. We have something called the cost factor, which is you can keep as many things as you want if you're willing to pay the price, which is time, space, money, and energy. So that's reference. Then action is, this is the ball is in my court. I need to pay this bill, write this letter, schedule this appointment. My coffee pot broke. It's under warranty. So what did I have to do? I had to go and get out the warranty, and then I had to contact the company, and then they had to send a copy of the receipt. And there's a whole bunch of papers related to that, which ultimately had to be digital, but it started with papers because that's the way it started in the first place. And then toss, of course, is the third one. And research shows that 80% of what we keep, we never use. And my experience has shown that the more we keep, the less we use, either because we don't know we have it or we can't find it. And so what we are about is helping people figure out how to organize their paper. It may mean they want to go digital, but it's a whole lot easier to go digital if you organize the paper first. And even if you do go digital, you still have the paper left from all the stuff before digital. And so we have many, many clients who have gone digital, some of them for as long as 10 years, but they still have years, in some cases, decades of paper left previously. And that's what we are here to help you solve the paper problem, because I can tell you for sure that if you solve the paper problem and you get it organized so that you feel comfortable, it will change everything in your life, because how you handle paper is reflected in how you handle everything else.
Amen. That's perfect. So you guys, I know with being the end of the year, we've got some of you have downtime and you're thinking about, getting organized. So we're going to give you some very action-oriented things that you can do. I'm going to tell you, we run boot camps. We have an office transformation boot camp where we go in depth in this, especially on the how to find the rest part, the stuff that you keep, right? Where we go really deep into that in that boot camp. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the exact same things we tell our students on day one, our boot campers on day one, is find a clear, or you may not find it, you have to create it, a clear horizontal space. That's the first question I'm going to say is, do you have a clear horizontal space, or can you create a clear horizontal space in your area, on or near your desk, right? Thank you, Tony. Tony, here, let me show her little. Tony said, boot camps are amazing. We'd have fun organizing, decluttering paper and organizing. But we want you to find a clear horizontal space and set up, I would say 3, but I'm going to explain why we're going to do 2. Just make room for 2 piles of paper on that desk, and then also room for you to have a stack. We don't want you to grab every single thing that needs to be organized. We definitely don't want you looking at the old stuff, boxes and closets, and Barbara will explain that in just a minute. We just want you to get the most current things maybe it's this week's mail, maybe it's today's mail. We'll talk about that in a second, but just get the most current information, clear horizontal space, and room on that space, on that table or countertop or whatever it is, desktop, for 2 piles of paper and your little stack, maybe this much to start, right? Don't go crazy. And you're going to pick up each individual piece of paper one by one, and you're going to go through those 3 things Barbara just talked about. Do I need or want to file this for future reference? If the answer is yes, put it in the file pile. Do I need to act on this? If that answer is yes, it goes in the act pile. If the answer is no to both of those, then it goes in the trash, toss, like tosses, file act, toss, trash, recycle, or shred. That's why you don't need that necessarily on the table. Just have those bins or something nearby, right? So your decisions are, do I need to file, do I need or want to file this? You may not know if you need to, but maybe you're not sure and you're scared to throw it away or get rid of it. So you say, yeah, I probably want to save this. So that goes in your reference file pile. If you need to do something, it goes in action. And if not, then you can toss, recycle, or shred. And if you just start with maybe just 2 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches of paper, and try that, you'll be amazed at how you feel. Now, Barbara, a lot of people start this process and they want to go for those bankers boxes and those file cabinets full of papers and things like that. Could you talk about why we don't start there, why we start with the most current new things coming in?
Absolutely. So there's several things to bring up here. First of all, one of our principles is today's mail is tomorrow's pile. So in our boot camps, one of the things we say is that the purpose of the boot camp is to stop the problem. And you stop the problem by creating a new system of exactly how to do that. So you don't want to go to the old stuff because that's not going to, it may feel better temporarily, but it's only temporarily because while you're over here cleaning out the old stuff, you got the new stuff coming over here. It never ends. The other thing that's really, that Andrea said that you probably just didn't even think was important, but she said, pick up one piece of paper. One of the things that I've watched people thousands of times struggle with this is have a pile of papers and they'll pick one and don't really want to deal with that one. So they'll put it over to the side or they'll rifle down through it. You cannot organize paper in group. The only way to organize paper is one piece of paper at a time. And you have to make a decision about every single piece of paper. There's nothing in between that. It's not like, so I'll give you a good example. Many years ago, a woman called me and she said, I have 4 boxes of paper that I've moved. I think it was 3 times. And what do? I said, you have there's not a lot of options. There's an option to either throw it all away and say, okay, I've moved it 4 times and I haven't needed it. So I'm going to shred it or recycle it or whatever you feel comfortable doing, or I'm going to go through it one piece of paper at a time because you can't go through it in groups of paper. So then it's like, oh, how long is this going to take? So here's a good way to measure that. Take an hour and say, all right, here's this box. I'm going to spend 1 hour and make a decision on each piece of paper that you pick up. You can't rifle through it, pick up one at the time and see at the end of an hour how much you got done. And then look at how much you have and say, okay, is this project something that I'm willing to invest in? So you're really wanting to start. So think about it again, about clutter is postponed decisions. There are only 3 decisions you can make: file, act, or toss. That's it. And if you start that decision-making process, it will give you, and every time you're tempted to not decide, oh, I can't decide that. What are you going to know tomorrow that you don't know today?
Good question. So make the decision. And like you said, file, act, or toss. So the file, act, toss system. I'm going to go through these again because as I was entering these, I realized I didn't show these. So file equals reference. So if you hear us say file pile or reference pile, it's the same thing. And just think about it. File it for future reference. Okay, that's the word that you want to think of. And our act in file, act, toss, act is do. And I recently started using the word do versus to do because one of the people in our community, I think Barbara, it was Prasant with the stack method. He talks about that, the difference between to do and do. To do,
Verb is do is a verb.
Do it.
That's
take
a really good one.
action.
That's
Yeah.
Andrea, that's the reason I love what we do, even after over 40 years, because I continually learn. I didn't think of that before, but it's really true. For
Yeah.
40 years, I've been saying act is something you have to do.
To do.
Makes more sense to say, and we learn from other people too.
Do. Yeah. Well, and to do it leans towards a postponed decision.
Postpone decision.
So it all comes full circle. So let's see, act and do, and then let's see, the last one was trash
Oh,
recycle. So toss is trash, recycle, or shred.
and let me just mention something about this, because that's also a really, when it comes to paper management, there are little things that make a huge difference. One of them is the size of your trash can, or it's your decision about recycling and shredding. So you can argue it any way you want to. One of our policies, when people say, what should we do? We say that's the wrong question. The question is, what will you do? And so, do you want to shred and do you want to recycle? And they're going to be trash. So if that's what you're going to do, then you're going to need 3 containers that are easily accessible. So when you're sitting at your workspace, or what we call the home office for business and life, when you're sitting at that command center, if you're going to recycle and shred, then you need to have a container there that you can reach it. And on our boot camps, we go into a much deeper part of the system. But if shredding and recycling is important, then you need to figure out a way to do that. So one thing I've learned through the years is that many people have traditional desks that have the drawers in them, where you end up with the mustard packets and the business cards you don't remember where you got and all that kind of stuff. Those drawers, a great place for shred, because it's kind of hidden away. It's easy to get to. So if you're sorting your mail and there's something that needs shred and you've got one of those drawers, you can put it in. That's one place. You can put it in a file folder or something. But the size of the wastebasket is so important. And I'll tell you a story with my family. It's not related to paper exactly, but it illustrates it. When I first married my husband 37 years ago, we had 5 children and lots of chaos, and not very organized children, I might add, and not a particularly organized husband either. And I was trying to figure out how to survive this. And getting things in the trash seemed to be a really big deal. I bought a huge basket, like a laundry basket with a lid off. And I put it in the family room and took the lid off, because it was easy to throw it away. I mean, it was like, it almost became a basketball game. And it was like, wow, that's the same with paper. And I also remember I was at a large association in Washington, D.C. We were doing a file cleanout day. These days we call them a productivity party. We were doing one of those events. And what happened was, and every time we do it, it happens, people underestimate how much is going to be pitched. Well, we ended up filling up all those big trash cans that we had, those big bins. And then people started slowing down. It was like there wasn't a place to put it. I don't know enough about the brain to know why it is, but I have observed that when the wastebasket is small, you throw away less.
That's true, because you don't want to fill it up. You don't want to fill up the
Yes, I don't know, but
waste.
I've seen it. So having or emptying it frequently or whatever is really, really, and making it easy. I've also learned when we're doing cleaning out in the offices, people would bring in trash bags to put it in. Well, it's difficult. It takes 2 hands to get paper, because you got to take one hand to pull the trash can up and one to pull it in. So one of the things we would do was bring in big boxes, and then we put it in the box, because it's much easier to put it in the box than it was in the bag. Then we could take the box and empty it into the bag. That's one of those little things that makes it so much easier. So when people struggle with paper, when I teach people how to do a discovery session with somebody and get started, one of the things we look at is what's the things little things that can make a difference, and is preventing them from, one, making the decisions. And we would be remiss if we didn't say that what we've learned is the biggest cause of postponing decisions is emotion.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
reason paper is so difficult is because what it represents. It's not the paper. The paper represents your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your expectations. And that's what you have to deal with the paper.
Yeah.
And sometimes you even have to identify why you don't know why you're struggling with it. So we have what we call in the organizing paper at home book, you'll see a chapter, which I highly recommend, called The Art of Wastebasketry, which is saying, how do you decide what it is that you want to keep? It does not have a right or a wrong answer. I mean, there are a few guidelines. I mean, in taxes, if you're in business, it's 7 years, and if it's personal, it's 3 years. And some real estate records, you want to save some of those, but most people save way more. In fact, I remember in the early days, what really people would have they would have paper copies of all of their utility bills for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, why? When have you ever gone back? Because if you don't pay your utility bill, the utility company will let you know. You don't need to worry about it. And then people say, if I sell a house, I'm going to want to know how much I paid in utilities. You can call the utility company and find that out. So people keep a whole lot, or like simple things when you're in a store and you get a receipt and they say, do you want a receipt? Well, the people that I worked with always, oh, yes, got to have a record, got to have a record. And I'd say, for what? What are you recording? And they learned that by simply saying no thank you to a receipt, or not taking the receipt from the gas pump, they were saving themselves a whole lot of effort. So the ultimate art of wastebasketry question is, what's the worst possible thing that would happen if I didn't have this? If I threw this away and I was wrong, what would happen? And then you say, is that something I'm willing to do? So a good example would be, let's go back to the bank statements. What's the purpose of a bank statement? It's to reconcile your checkbook, right? I saw people who had bank statements saved for decades and never had reconciled their checkbook once, didn't have a clue whether it worked or not. And why were they keeping it? Well, it had numbers on it. And we think, oh, if we have numbers on it, that means the IRS is going to want it. Well, the IRS doesn't want that. So back in the early days, I sort of had people go through their canceled checks and pull out the ones they needed for tax purposes, the ones they need for real estate, so improvements on your real estate for capital gains, and long-term warranties, which is about maybe 5 to 10% of the checks, if that much. But the check that you wrote to the veterinary or to the dog trainer for washing your dog, or the grocery store, I mean, what are you going to do with that? So we keep way more because we don't think it through. So you want to say, why am I saving this? What value is this really adding to me? And so in the case of a bank statement, I would say, okay, if you threw away your bank statements and you really needed it, you could call the bank and they would give you one. Yes, they would charge you a fee. So you have to decide which is more important to you. Are you willing to take the time, the system, the time, space, money, and energy to save those bank statements at home in case there's 1 out of 100 chances you might need it? Or are you willing to say, oh, I'll get it from the bank if they charge me $5?
Well, most banks have online. You can go in there and download your statements directly from your bank. Yeah.
In this day and age, that's absolutely, you don't have to worry about that at all. But of course, then people say, oh, well, I don't trust it. Well, it's the way it is. So to say you don't trust it is insane, because we have to trust that they're forcing us to use it. So we better figure it out.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I want to give you guys a resource for every kind of a lot of the things we just talked about. There's a 1-page document that you can get in 1 second. Let me just share this, and we're going to put this in the chat. Oh, it went away. There's a webinar that you can go to. So there it is. Hold on. It's called Less Clutter, More Life. Okay. So productiveenvironment.com/webinar. So at the time of this recording, there's a replay there. You can go ahead and watch the replay about our Less Clutter, More Life and about our office transformation bootcamp that is coming up. We also will be doing a live webinar in January. So if you enroll for this one, we will be sure you get invited to the live one where you can interact live with Barbara and myself and some of our team members in our Certified Productive Environment Specialist team. So go ahead and do that. And when you enroll in the webinar, you will be invited to complete a scorecard. And I'm going to go ahead and put that link too, just in case you want to just go straight to that. productiveenvironmentscore.com. And I'm going to click it. There's a delay from the time I type to the time it shows up. So give me just a second. But when you fill out that scorecard, you will get access to a one-page document. There it is, productive environment. So I'm just make sure I spelled it correctly. Environmentscore.com. You will get access to a one-page document that shows exactly what we just talked about. It's the file act toss system. It's the art of wastebasketry questions that Barbara just talked about. And something that we don't have time to cover on this podcast is what we call the Magic 6. And it is the 6 core components of a productive office, no matter, or workspace. Even if you don't have an office, it could be your kitchen counter, your command center, wherever you pay bills and do things like that. There are 6 core components that the form has changed over the decades, but the need for the tool has stayed the same. And when you go see what those Magic 6 are, so that's my curiosity approach for those of you that are new. You want to go get that document so you can see what I'm talking about. So those are 2 actions you can take now. Let me just circle back to the task. So over the next week or so, starting today, starting at the end of this podcast, grab about an inch worth of paper, clear a horizontal space, have room for a file pile, which is our reference, have room for an act pile, which is our do's, and have room for trash, recycle, and or shred. Don't overthink it. If it's a box for today, for right now, that's fine. Okay, don't overthink that process. Get those set up and take that action. If you just do an inch or 2 inches of that will get you moving. That will get you moving. Now, you're going to want to know, once you've done that, you're going to feel good about it. And you're going to say, okay, now what do I do with these 2 piles? What do I do with this file pile? And what do I do with this act pile? If you go watch our webinar, that will give you kind of some next steps. And then to actually do it with you and together would be joining one of our boot camps, joining an upcoming boot camp, which we have one coming up in January. So January 2025, depending on when you're watching this video, productiveenvironment.com/webinar. You can actually go there now, watch the replay of a previous webinar. It's going to look like it's live because I'm going to go ahead and tell you're not going to be able to stop it because we want you to, it's a workshop. We don't want you to click stop, pause, and walk away. It's about 90 minutes. I want to go ahead and give you a heads up, but it is a workshop. You will learn what to do with those piles that you've just created. Okay. And then you can enroll in the bootcamp immediately and you can get access to some pre-bootcamp resources. And then you'll get to interact with us live. And New Path Productivity, Kathy Music says, the Magic 6 is my favorite. Yes, it is. And Kathy teaches the Magic 6. We've got some lessons from Kathy teaching that. So definitely check that out. And if you guys have any questions, you can always also go to our website. There's a little contact button in the bottom right corner. So just productiveenvironment.com and say, hey, I watched your podcast today, or you can ask on whatever platform you're watching us on now. I watched your podcast today and I have a question about this. We love to interact with you guys in person. So don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. So with that,
I got 2 quick things I want to say to wrap up.
Yeah.
One is that organizing paper at home is available on Amazon. And if you order it on Amazon and you have questions, I'm happy to, as Andrea said, just reach out and say, I've got questions about something that's in the book. The other thing I want to say, and this is a really, really important homework for 2025 or for anything in the future, which is figure out where is going to be your home office for business and life. And the most important thing about it, I've learned this through the years with all these clients, is it must be a place you like to be.
Yes.
And there's so many creative ways. I had a client that made it her front hall closet. For some of you, it's the kitchen counter. There are lots of ways that you can do it, but it's important that you like it. We could spend a whole podcast talking about why it's important to like it and what it means to do with lighting and a comfortable chair and maybe the right artwork and all those kinds of things. But think about where that's going to be, because you are going to need it for the rest of your life. As long as you are breathing, paper is going to be coming in, and digital will be coming in as well. And the decision making is the same process. And we want to help you learn to make good decisions so you can accomplish your work and enjoy your life.
That's right. Both. Not just accomplish your work and not just enjoy your life, but both. And
Absolutely.
okay. So guys, we want, no matter where you're watching us from, I think some of you may be watching us on Facebook. We want you to make your way over to our YouTube channel, and this podcast will be there. The video will be there, and all of the links that we talked about will be in the description box there. So please go over to YouTube, search Productive Environment or Productive Environment Institute. We should come up. And then I don't have the direct link handy right now, but we should come up, and then you can watch this video and grab all those links. Okay. So that's your homework. And we want to know, did you do it? Did you find that horizontal space? Did you do your file act toss? Did you do it? So let us know that you did it, and keep in touch with us. All right, guys, that ends this episode of Pep Talk, Productive Environment Podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.